You never forget the sound of 1,000 feet running for their lives. It's not the sound of panic you remember. It's the silence right before it. That was the sound I heard on my land that morning. A silence so sharp it cut through the air like a blade. Then, in the next breath, screaming. Hundreds of voices, all shouting at once, as 24 bulls broke into a run. Tents collapsing, coolers flying, cars spinning in the mud. And I stood there, holding the gate rope, my boots covered in dust, watching the chaos unfold on my own property. But before you judge me, let me tell you one thing. I didn't start that fight. I just finished it. It started the same way most trouble does, with good fences and bad neighbors. I live in a quiet corner of Arizona, just outside a gated community called Silver Creek Estates. You know the type: spotless lawns, power-walking retirees, and an HOA president who believes she's the mayor of America. Her name was Karen Holloway, and from the first day she saw my ranch, she decided she didn't like it. Maybe it was the cows. Maybe it was the smell of hay instead of roses. Or maybe it was the fact that my land, my legally fenced, privately owned land, stood right next to her idea of perfection. Whatever it was, she made it her mission to erase me. Now, I've owned that ranch for 20 years, built it from nothing but dust and hard work. Every acre bought fair and square, deeded, taxed, and fenced by the county. There's no community about it. But the HOA saw open grass, and they started calling it a green belt. They said it was for everyone. They said it was shared property. But the law said otherwise. And the signs I'd nailed on every fence post said it even clearer. Private property, no trespassing. The first time I caught her walking her dog through my pasture, she smiled and said, "Oh, I didn't think you mind. It's just grass. Just grass." That's how it starts. Today it's a walk. Tomorrow it's a festival. I ignored it at first. You get used to people crossing lines when you own land. But Karen wasn't people. She was a committee. And committees don't stop, they organize. A few weeks later, she posted a flyer on the community board. It said, "Freedom Campout, hosted by the Silver Creek HOA. Join us for food, music, and family fun in the open fields behind Clubhouse." Those open fields. That was my ranch. The morning of the campout, I woke up to what sounded like a concert. Engines, laughter, country music echoing across the pasture. When I looked out my window, I couldn't believe my eyes. Tents, RVs, bonfires, over 500 people spread across my land like a small city. Kids running between my cattle fences, people parking right over my irrigation lines. They even set up a stage on my hayfield. And there she was, Karen Holloway, standing on my fence, microphone in hand, shouting, "Welcome to the first annual Silver Creek Freedom Campout." I stormed out in my truck, horn blaring, brakes squealing. The crowd turned to look at me like I was the intruder. Karen just smiled, the kind of smile you'd expect from a movie villain who's about to say something stupid. "Oh, Mr. Barrett," she shouted. "We've been trying to call you. Isn't this great? Everyone's enjoying your beautiful green belt." I got out, slammed the truck door, and pointed to the ground. "This isn't a green belt. It's my land. Private. You're trespassing." Her smile didn't even twitch. She said, "Oh, please. The HOA has a right to access common areas. You can't just hog all this space for yourself." I said, "Lady, this space is paid for. You see this dirt? I pay tax on every inch of it. You pay to tell people what color they can paint their garage door." The crowd laughed. She didn't. That's when I knew this wasn't over. I called the sheriff. He came an hour later, sirens off, hand resting on his belt like he was already tired. He looked around, sighed, and said, "Technically, this looks like a civil issue, sir. Boundary dispute." I pointed to my deed. He shrugged. "I can't remove 500 people without a court order. 500. Tents, coolers, cars, music, all on land that was mine." And the law just smiled and said, "Not my problem." That was the moment I stopped being patient. I spent that night thinking. I wasn't going to get into a shouting match with a mob. I wasn't going to swing fists or break fences. I was going to use something stronger, the law itself. At sunrise, I drove to the sheriff's office with a form in hand. A simple document called a livestock movement notice. Every rancher in the county uses it when moving cattle. It's normal, legal, routine. I handed it to the deputy. It said, "Notice, on June 10th at 12 p.m., livestock, 24 bulls, will be moved across the west pasture of Barrett Ranch." That west pasture, that was exactly where they were camping. I filed the same notice with animal control and the county clerk. By law, I was covered. It was my land, my herd, my right. I wasn't evicting anyone. I was ranching. That's the beauty of a system people like Karen never read. They love rules until you use them too. By noon the next day, the sky was clear. You could hear laughter from a mile away, music, kids, grills sizzling. They thought they'd won. They thought I'd back down. They were wrong. I rode out with my two wranglers, both seasoned, calm, no malice in their eyes. We opened the east gate slow, steady, and out came 24 of the biggest, most stubborn bulls you've ever seen. Not charging, not angry, just moving, slow and wide, the way bulls do when they smell open space. People looked up from their picnic blankets. Laughter faded. Then came the screaming. They ran in every direction. Tents collapsed under their own panic. Coolers spilled beer into the dirt. One man tried to grab his dog and tripped over a lawn chair. A group of teenagers sprinted toward their RVs. Somebody yelled, "Call the cops." Karen climbed onto a golf cart, waving her arms, shouting, "They can't do this. Stop them." But the bulls didn't stop. They weren't chasing anyone. They were just walking, big, heavy, unstoppable. One bull brushed past her golf cart, caught it with his horn, and flipped it like a toy. Karen screamed. The crowd roared. And I stood at the gate, camera running, heart steady. Everything was recorded. Everything by the book. When the sheriff finally arrived, he didn't say a word. He just watched the campers running for their lives. Then turned to me and said, "You filed a movement notice, didn't you?" I handed him a copy. He nodded. "Well," he said, "they should have read the signs." He didn't stop me, didn't fine me, didn't even raise his voice. Because he knew I hadn't broken a single law. But Karen? She wasn't done. Not yet. That night, she filed a lawsuit, reckless endangerment. She claimed I'd endangered lives, that my bulls were used as weapons. But here's the thing about truth. It's heavy, and it leaves a paper trail. I had everything. Drone footage of the trespassers, photos of cut fences, screenshots of her HOA flyers, copies of all my legal filings, and even a recording of her calling my ranch a community field. You could almost hear the judge's patience run out when she spoke. "This isn't your property," Karen said. "It's shared land." The judge leaned forward. "Ma'am," he said, "the deed says otherwise. You led 500 people on a land that wasn't yours. You ignored every warning. This man acted within his legal rights." The courtroom was silent. Karen's face went pale. Then the gavel hit. Case dismissed. But that's not the best part. The HOA was ordered to pay for the damages. Every fence post, every broken sprinkler, every ounce of fuel I used moving my herd. Plus my attorney fees. Plus the county fines for illegal camping. All told, she and her HOA owed me nearly $128,000. And when the dust settled, the community board voted to remove her as president. I didn't smile. I just nodded. Justice doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it walks in quietly, wearing muddy boots. That was 2 years ago. Now, when I walk that same pasture, the grass grows taller than ever. The bulls graze in peace. And the only sound I hear at noon is the wind moving through the fence line. But every now and then, when I pass by the corner where she parked her golf cart, I can still hear that faint echo, not of screaming, not of panic, but of silence learning a lesson. Karen's downfall was only the beginning, because what came next, the retaliation, the HOA's secret environmental complaint, and the hidden camera footage that went viral, turned my quiet ranch into a national headline that you'd think after losing a case that big. A person would take a breath, step back, move on. But Karen Holloway didn't breathe, she plotted. And when a person like that plots, they don't come for your fence. They come for your peace. A few months passed after the court ruling. The ranch went quiet again. My bulls were grazing, my dogs were sleeping under the porch, and I started believing maybe the storm had passed. But peace doesn't last long when your neighbor's pride is louder than her common sense. It started small. Little things. A missing mailbox. My trash bin's knocked over. Somebody spray-painted community land on my front gate in big white letters. Petty stuff. The kind you shrug off. But then one morning, I walked out to find a county inspector parked by my barn. Clipboard in hand. Yellow vest. No smile. "Morning," he said. "I got an anonymous complaint. Says you're dumping chemical waste into the creek." I just stared at him. "The what?" He pointed behind my barn, at the same little stream that's been running clean since my grandfather dug the trench. "It's probably nothing," he said. "But since it came from HOA, I've got to check." And there was again. That name. Those 3 letters that can make even the sanest man lose faith in humanity. HOA. Now, for those who've never dealt with one, an HOA isn't a neighborhood. It's a government in a sweater vest. It doesn't care about right or wrong. Only rules. Rules written by people who never fixed a fence, never chased a bull, never lifted anything heavier than a complaint form. So, when they say you violated something, you're guilty first, innocent only after you pay. The inspector did his job, took photos, samples, even questioned my ranch hands. 2 days later, I got the official letter. Environmental hazard under investigation. Pending fine up to $25,000. It felt like a punch in the gut. I hadn't broken the law, but they were trying to paint me as the villain, and I knew exactly who was holding the brush. I drove straight to the HOA office. It was a glass building across from the golf course, the kind of place that smelled like air conditioning and fake success. And there she was, Karen Holloway, in her blazer, sipping coffee like she was queen of the subdivision. She smiled when she saw me. "Well, if it isn't our local cowboy celebrity," she said. "How's the herd?" I clenched my jaw. "Funny thing, Karen. The county just showed up about a pollution report. Anonymous source. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" She raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I don't deal with that kind of thing. But people in this community are concerned. After all, your animals could be affecting our water table." There it was. The smirk. That smug, perfect smirk that said she thought she'd found a new way to win. I leaned in close enough for her perfume to choke me. "You listen to me," I said quietly. "You lost once because you crossed the line. Try that again, and the only water you'll be standing near will be the tears you cry in court." Her smile faltered, just for a second. Then she said something that chilled me more than I expected. "You can't fight paperwork, Mr. Barrett. It doesn't bleed." That night, I sat on my porch under the stars, thinking about how truth gets buried under ink and signatures. People think evil looks like a villain, but sometimes it looks like a woman with a clipboard and a committee. My phone buzzed. A message from one of my ranch hands. "Cody, boss, you better see this. HOA Facebook group. You're trending." I opened the link. There was not a photo of my ranch taken from the creek. Someone had edited the water to look black, like oil. The caption said, "Local rancher destroying our environment. Share to spread awareness." It had over 800 comments. Half of them people I didn't even know. The other half, neighbors who used to wave at me. And at the top of the post, shared by none other than Karen Holloway. I didn't sleep that night. You can fight trespassers. You can fight lawsuits. But lies? Lies spread faster than fire. And they burn longer too. By morning, 2 more county officials had visited. One for unregistered livestock movement. One for unauthorized fencing. Both traced back to HOA reports. It was clear Karen wanted me gone. If she couldn't take my land by force, she'd bury me in paper until I gave up. But I don't give up. I adapt. So I came up with a plan. Simple. Legal. Bulletproof. So I waited. And when the county scheduled my environmental hearing, I walked in with a smile and a laptop. The room was full. Karen, her HOA board, the county inspectors. She had that same confident grin she wore in court. The one that says, "This is my show," until it wasn't. When my turn came, I plugged in a laptop and hit play. The video filled the screen. Night vision footage. 2 people sneaking through the dark. Karen, holding a phone light, recording. Her friend pouring liquid from a container. Both laughing. Both clearly visible. When the playback ended, I didn't say a word. The silence said everything. Karen's face turned the color of the paper, she loved so much. The county officer looked at her and said, "Ma'am, can you explain this?" She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The investigation flipped overnight. Now the HOA wasn't accusing me. They were defending themselves. Turns out, Karen had orchestrated the whole thing to frame me. The chemical waste was just motor oil from her friend's garage. They were going to spread the video online after the hearing. But now I had the footage, and I made sure everyone saw it. Local news picked up the story first. HOA president accused of sabotaging rancher's property. Then online blogs. Then the national outlets. Within days, the headline went viral. People loved it. The rich HOA villain versus the honest rancher. Talk shows debated it. Facebook flooded with memes of Karen running for bulls. She became exactly what she feared most, a joke. But it wasn't about revenge for me. It was about truth. Because when someone lies about you long enough, you start to doubt your own reflection. And that's what I refused to let happen. A few weeks later, the county dropped all charges against me. In fact, they fined the HOA for environmental misconduct. Karen faced charges of property damage, trespassing, and false reporting. I heard she lost her home after that, sold it to pay legal fees. The HOA collapsed within 6 months. No one wanted to be part of it anymore. One morning, as I rode out across my pasture, I saw something strange by the Old West fence. A single lawn chair, folded, leaning against the post. A note clipped to it. It said, "You were right about the fences, but I still don't understand why you opened that gate." No name, but I knew who wrote it. I didn't smile. I just folded it and put it in my jacket pocket. Some fights aren't about land. They're about lessons. Now, when I drive past the old HOA office, it's empty. Dust on the windows. Grass creeping up the walls. The community first sign half fallen. I stop sometimes just to look, not out of pride, out of gratitude. Because peace, I've learned, doesn't come when the noise stops. It comes when you stop needing to be right. Aloud. That word again. The kind that turns ownership into opinion. I called Bill. He said, "Don't touch them. Don't argue. Just record." So I did. For days. Every dig, every truck, every person stepping onto that strip. My drone hovered quietly above, capturing everything. And then, on the third day, I caught something strange. One of the workers wasn't testing soil. He was drilling a metal rod deep into the ground. And attached to it, a small plastic box sealed shut. He buried it back, covered it neatly, and left without marking the spot. I replayed the footage 10 times. Zoomed in. Paused. It wasn't soil testing. It was installation. But installation of what? A week later, my internet started cutting out. Phone lines crackled. GPS went haywire whenever I drove near the pasture. Even the drone's signal glitched over that strip. Coincidence? Maybe. But I'd lived long enough to know coincidence doesn't drive 3 trucks and dig onto your land. I called the county utilities again. The operator put me on hold, came back, and said, "There's no record of maintenance on Parcel 7A in our system." My stomach sank. "If you didn't send them," I said. "Then who did?" She paused. "Sir, can I put you on a brief hold?" The line clicked, and then went dead. That night, I saw headlights again out by the fence. 2 SUVs parked on the edge of that same strip. No logos, just blacked-out windows and engine noise too steady to be neighbors. I grabbed my flashlight, my camera, and walked out there slow. The vehicles backed away as I approached. No words, no gestures. Just gone. But the next morning, I found new footprints. Boots. Fresh. Leading right up to that buried box. I called my lawyer again. "Bill, we've got a problem." He sighed. "Son, you always do." "What now?" I sent him the footage. He didn't speak for a full minute. Then said, "That's not county work. That's private tech. Probably surveillance grade." I froze. "Surveillance?" He nodded. "Likely installed through that old clause. They're monitoring you, or worse, trying to build a case for acquisition." Acquisition? Yeah. If they can prove you're using the land in a way that violates zoning or environmental guidelines, they can argue for eminent domain transfer. They could take it from you. That word hit me like a bull's kick. Take. I thought I'd seen the last of that HOA. But this was something bigger, smarter, hidden behind legal smoke. I spent the next few weeks digging deeper, literally and legally. I pulled every record from 1987, every signature, every amendment, until I found it. A single, handwritten note attached to the original clause, signed by a K. Holloway. Same last name, same curse. It read, "Clause preserved for future development access." Future development. That was the plan all along. Even before she met me. She didn't just want my land. She wanted control of it, forever. So I decided to end it once and for all. I hired a surveyor, top-notch, county certified. We scanned every inch of that boundary. And what we found buried under the soil wasn't just a box. It was a network. 5 devices, all buried 6 feet deep, all transmitting data. When we opened one, it had a small circuit board and a micro antenna labeled as CSP Property Grid Active. They weren't testing. They were mapping, digitally redrawing my land as theirs. That was their final move, their hidden clause. I brought it all to the county supervisor. Photos, footage, buried devices, the old clause. He stared at me, stunned. "Mr. Barrett, this could qualify as wire fraud and property tampering." I said, "You think?" Within a week, county investigators shut it all down. The devices were confiscated. The clause was declared void. And the HOA, what was left of it, was dissolved under federal violation. When it was all over, I walked that same strip of land again. The grass still looked the same. The sky still hung heavy over it. But I knew deep down, this wasn't about land anymore. It was about something simpler, learning when to stand and when to stop explaining why you stood. That night, I found something wedged under my gate. A note, typed and signed. It said, "You won the land, but you'll never own the quiet." I folded it once, burned it in a coffee can, and watched the smoke drift east, towards Silver Creek. I thought that was the end. But a few months later, a young woman came knocking, said she was Karen's daughter, and she had something of her mother's that she thought I should see. It was late autumn when she showed up. One of those days where the sky hangs low and the air smells like rain that forgot how to fall. I'd been repairing a fence line by the north pasture, trying to make peace with silence again. No HOA, no inspectors, no paperwork, just the sound of nails, wind, and memory. Then I heard tires crunching on gravel. A small silver sedan pulled up to my gate. The engine stopped, but no one stepped out. I waited a moment. Then the door opened, and out came a woman, maybe late 20s. Dark hair, nervous hands, a familiar sadness in her eyes. "Mr. Barrett?" she asked softly. "Yeah," I said. "Can I help you?" She nodded, clutching a folder to her chest. "My name's Emily Holloway," she said. And just like that, the quiet I'd worked so hard for was gone again. I didn't speak right away. Didn't have to. Her last name said enough. She noticed my hesitation and took a step back. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said quickly. I need to tell you something." Her voice shook a little, but not the way liars' voices do. This was different, like someone carrying a truth too heavy for too long. "All right," I said. "Come on up to the porch. Coffee's still hot." We sat there for a while without talking. She didn't look like her mother, not in the sharpness or the confidence. She looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from being ashamed of someone else's choices. Finally, she spoke. "My mom, she passed away 3 months ago." I nodded slowly. "I'm sorry to hear that." And I meant it, even after everything. "She wasn't a bad person," Emily said, staring at her coffee. "She just needed to win. All the time, even when there was nothing to win." I didn't know what to say. I'd spent years thinking of her mother as a villain. It's hard to picture someone like that having a daughter, who speaks with a voice that trembles when she says sorry. Emily opened the folder. Inside were papers, old, creased, some yellow with age. One caught my eye immediately. The title read, "Silver Creek Estates, Founding Notes, 1987. I recognized the signature at the bottom. "K. Holloway, where did you get these?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "My mom kept everything. Letters, drafts, maps, even her HOA notes from before the neighborhood existed. She wanted me to burn them when she died. But I read them first." She took out another paper, handwritten, folded 3 times. This is why I came. I unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was familiar. I'd seen it before, on flyers, on complaint letters, on every legal notice she ever sent me. It said, if I lose to him, tell him it was never about land. It was about something I couldn't protect. The ink bled at the edges, like it had been written through tears. I looked at Emily. What does this mean? She sighed. My mom started the HOA because of my brother. He died when I was little, before I was even old enough to remember him. He drowned in that same creek that runs through your ranch. I froze. The same creek I'd been accused of polluting. She continued. Back then, the county said it was an accident. But Mom, she blamed the property owners. She said if there had been proper fencing, if someone had cared enough to post signs, he'd still be alive. Her voice cracked on that last word. I just sat there, the world suddenly smaller. Like everything I'd fought against had a different shape now. She built the HOA out of grief, Emily said quietly. It started as a neighborhood safety group, but it turned into something else, control. Because control feels like safety, even when it's not. I nodded slowly. That hit deeper than I expected. I'd seen it before, grief turning people into their own guards. She was wrong to come after you, Emily continued. She knew that. She told me once, after she lost the court case, that she felt like the universe was finally punishing her for crossing too many lines. She looked up at me then, eyes glassy but steady. I came because I didn't want that to be the last word between your families. For a long moment, we just sat there. The wind moved through the porch railing like it was breathing for both of us. Then I asked, why bring me this now? Emily smiled faintly, almost embarrassed, because I found something else in her files. Something you should probably know. She handed me a smaller envelope. Inside was a photo, black and white, faded. It showed a man I didn't recognize, standing in front of a fence with a sign that said, Barrett Ranch, since 1963. Behind him, in the corner, stood a little boy holding a dog, and a woman I did recognize, Karen Holloway. I blinked, confused. Wait, this was taken on my land. Emily nodded. Yeah, apparently, before you bought this place. It was rented out to several families for summer farming. My grandparents were one of them. They lived here for a few years. That's how my mom knew the land so well. It hit me like a slow punch. All those years of hatred. And it wasn't about the ranch I bought. It was about the home she lost. She used to play in your pastures, Emily said softly. She learned to ride a horse here. That's why she couldn't let it go. It wasn't just land to her. It was memory. I didn't know what to feel. Anger didn't make sense anymore. Pity didn't either. Just a strange mix of understanding and sorrow. I guess we both wanted to protect something, I said quietly. Her a memory, me a piece of peace. Emily nodded. She was wrong, but she loved that place. I thought you should know. She stood up to leave, but I stopped her. Wait, I said. There's something you should have. I went inside and came back with a box. Inside were photos, ones I'd taken during the legal battles. The campout, the bulls, the chaos. But there was one picture on top. Karen, standing by her golf cart, face caught mid-yell, hair wild in the wind. I handed it to her and said, history doesn't have to stay ugly. It just has to stay honest. She smiled, and, for the first time, I saw a Holloway smile that didn't look like trouble. Before she left, she turned to me and said something I'll never forget. She used to say you reminded her of my grandfather. Stubborn, quiet, and too proud to explain yourself. I laughed. Sound about right. Maybe that's why she fought you so hard, Emily said. She didn't know how else to remember him. And with that, she drove away, the dust following her car like a small, polite goodbye. That night, I walked down to the creek, the same one that started all, the same one that had taken a child's life decades ago. The water moved slow, clear as glass, like it finally forgave the years of noise above it. I knelt by the bank and whispered, I hope you found peace, Karen. The wind carried that whisper away, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't echo back. I thought that would be the end of the story. But the day after Emily's visit, something unexpected arrived in my mailbox. A deed transfer notice. It said 1 acre of land, bordering the creek, had been gifted to me by the Holloway estate, that it's strange how the past finds you, not with a knock, but with an envelope. I found it sitting in my mailbox one quiet morning. No stamp, no sender, just my name written in neat cursive across the front. Inside was a folded letter from a law firm in Phoenix, and attached to it a deed. The words were plain, but the meaning wasn't. Transfer of ownership. 1 acre of land bordering Silver Creek, gifted by the estate of Karen Holloway. I read it 3 times, thinking maybe I was seeing things, but it was real. Signed, stamped, filed. The same woman who once tried to take everything from me. I left me a piece of her land. I sat there on my porch for a long while, the paper trembling slightly in my hands. I couldn't decide if I was angry, confused, or grateful. Maybe all 3. The next day, I drove down to the county office to confirm it. The clerk scanned the document and nodded. Yes, sir. It's legitimate. Transferred to you under estate clause, in the interest of restoration. Restoration. That word stayed in my mind all the way home. It didn't sound like revenge or apology. It sounded like peace trying to speak again. When I got back, I saddled my horse and rode down to the creek. The morning light was soft, the kind that forgives everything it touches. The air smelled like rain again, and for once, I hoped it would fall. The acre she'd given me sat right at the bend of the stream, a gentle slope covered in wildflowers and sycamore shade. I hadn't set foot on that side in years. Not since the lawsuits, not since the shouting, not since the day I'd moved my bulls through here to end it all. And yet here was again, quiet, peaceful, almost like it had been waiting for her to let go. As I walked the boundary, I noticed something odd, a small wooden post half buried in the soil. When I pulled it free, I found a tiny metal plaque attached. The engraving was faint, but I could still make out the words. In memory of Caleb Holloway, 1979 to 1986. Her son, the boy who drowned. I stood there for a while, the world completely still around me. I could almost hear her, not angry this time, but human. All those years of fighting, and I'd never once known the full story. I'd seen her as my enemy, but she'd only ever been a mother who lost something she couldn't replace. And maybe that's what this was, her way of giving it back. A piece of peace, a way of saying sorry without saying a word. That evening, I called her daughter. When Emily picked up, I told her about the deed. She was quiet for a long moment, then said softly, she wanted you to have that spot. That's where she used to take Caleb to feed the ducks. She said it was the only place she ever felt close to him. I felt my throat tighten. She could have just told me, I said. She didn't know how, Emily replied. She only knew how to fight. For weeks after that, I couldn't stop thinking about the boy, the creek, the plaque, the woman who couldn't forgive the water. So I decided to do something. I cleared that whole acre by hand, cut the weeds, fixed the fence, and built a small wooden bridge across the stream. Nothing fancy, just strong, honest, quiet. Then, right beside that old plaque, I planted a tree, a red oak, the kind that grows slow and steady, the kind that outlives arguments. I carved a small sign beneath it that read, "For Caleb and for peace between neighbors." The day I finished, I stood there as the wind brushed through the leaves, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel angry when I thought of her name. Funny thing about time, it softens even the hardest soil. It teaches you that some fences aren't meant to keep people out. They're meant to remind you where understanding begins. A few months later, I got a letter from the county again. This time, it wasn't bad news. It was a thank you note. Apparently, visitors had started stopping by the bridge, leaving flowers, notes, sometimes prayers. The county declared it a heritage site. Not for me, not for the HOA, but for reconciliation. They called it Holloway Crossing. I didn't ask for that name, but it felt right. Sometimes I ride past it at sunset. The light hits the water just right, and you can see the reflection of the oak swaying like a gentle heartbeat. Every now and then, someone new is there, an old couple, a kid throwing stones. Sometimes even folks from Silver Creek who used to glare at me. They smile now. They wave, and I wave back, because the fight's gone. The noise is gone. And all that's left is the land. Quiet, unchanged, and finally free from pride. I still keep that original deed framed in my office. Right beside it, the old no trespassing sign that started everything. It reminds me that peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from understanding what you were fighting for in the first place. I never sold the ranch, never moved away, but I changed something. I took down half the warning signs and replaced them with new ones. They say, respect the land. It remembers more than we do. Some nights when the wind is just right, I swear I can still hear faint laughter by the creek. Not haunting, comforting, like a mother and son finally home. Maybe that's just memory playing tricks. Or maybe it's what happens when old battles finally turn into blessings. Either way, I let it be, because sometimes forgiveness isn't about saying, I forgive you. It's about planting a tree and walking away before anyone asks why. Final reflection, closing narration. People ask me sometimes if I regret releasing those bulls. If I do it again, I tell them the truth. I wouldn't change a thing. Not because it was right, but because it led here, to the quiet, to the bridge, to understanding that anger may build fences, but grace builds roots. Karen's gone. The HOA is gone. But the land, it's still here, alive, patient, forgiving. And maybe that's what land was meant to teach us all along. You can't truly own it. You just care for it until it forgives you for trying. And that's the truth about the land she left behind. Not a victory, not a loss, just peace, finally and forever. If this story moved you, share it. Because sometimes the biggest fences aren't between neighbors. They're between hearts that forgot how to listen. This was the land she left behind. Thank you for hearing it.